Hi, everyone. I'm here with another flower. Some of you have written to me or messaged me and told me that you're really enjoying some of the flowers that I've had. So I thought we'd continue with this summer daisy, which I absolutely love. Now I do have, as with all of my designs that I teach here, I have an instructional packet on my website, which is debbiecole.com. In there, you have all the instructions with all the colors and multiple photos, and more importantly, the line drawing. So I've already put in the line drawing and some of the steps, because otherwise we'd be here for a long time. And I thought it would be fun to show you, first of all, is with the background. This is how I base cutted the background. And then what I wanted to do is just give it a softer effect. And this is similar, but not exactly to the type of background I did for the dogwoods. So if you want to refer to that video, you can. But I'm going to be using the brushes I generally use for dry brushing for the whole video. And along with one other one. Now I'll say that I do have a series of dry brushing brushes called the Debbie Cole creative blending set. And those have the Monza short rounds in them. These are dome blenders. And Jasonia also has a whole set of Sure Touch dome blenders. And I really like hers, but well, first of all, they're more readily available and they're a little bit less expensive than the ones from Silver Brush. So I'll be alternating between the two of them. I'm also going to be using this special brush. It's called a Possibility Brush by Jasonia and almost looks like a mop brush. I love this for base coating. And so what we're going to do right away is, and I've got a dry brush, we're going to go into the color here. And I just wanted to show you how it works. I wanted you to note that we have this color in the background. And then I'm going to be putting in the foreground petal flowers with this brush. And I'm just turning it to make it more advantageous for me. But what I absolutely love is the amount of paint that this particular brush holds. And so what I'll do is I'll just go in with one coat then. And if there's a little bit of streaking, that's fine, because we all know that flowers have streaking. And then I have another petal that's going to come over here. What I like about this, when you put fresh paint next to dried paint, you can see the difference in color. Always remember, when you're working with acrylics, they dry at least one value darker. Value is how light or dark a color is. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is get the darker color here. And I couldn't really use the same brush because it's just a little bit pudgy. So what I'll do is I'll just go into my flat brush. And remember, a flat brush is anything that has a squared chisel edge. And so I'm going to just fill this in here. And I'm not too concerned if there's a little bit of spaces with the blue showing there. Now, while that's setting up, let's talk about how I did the background. I went into my first color. And again, all my colors are listed in the instructions. I try really hard to not give you a lot of mixing. I do use the Americana, Deco Art Americana paints. If you're used to bottled or tube acrylics, you can just thin them a little bit. What I like about the Americana is the paint consistency is perfect to go with, and I don't have to play around with it. And I do acrylic layering. I don't do a lot of blending. I've seen other artists blending as if they're using oils. And generally, when you're working with acrylics, you can try blending, but it's much easier to do layering. And I just noticed I had a ridge in my paint, in case you were wondering what I was doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my brush with my first color. And up here is my base coat color. I might need that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a lot out because we're going to do what's called dry brushing. My brush was dry, and I only have a residue of paint in it now. And I'm going to just come in with a very light touch and just do random little circles and creating a little bit of texture. I am allowing the background to show through. I just want to create a, I find when backgrounds are solid, it's a little bit heavy. So I just try to create a little bit softer, more airy background because it's a flower. Plus, if you were to look at a daisy outside, you would see perhaps a little bit of the sky blue with maybe a little bit of greens. And so that's what we're doing here. And it would not look all one solid color. So right now I have hardly any paint in my brush, and I'm just going over, really just kind of blending it out. Now I'm going to go into my next color. And I'm doing the same thing where I'm taking the paint out, so I only have a residue in there. Now I have to really make sure I'm coming in with a nice soft touch. It may get a little bit heavy, and I find it grabs really easily because this is where the wood is underneath. So I will show you what we're going to do at the end, so nothing looks too harsh. And you can see it really settles down as you go along. I'm going to pick up, I loaded into the blue, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of this green. I want the blue and the green together. And this is the green that I base coated the stem in. And I'm just going to add a little bit of green here and there. And I'm finding a lot of my green dissipated in the rest of the painting. So I'll just put a little bit more around. Okay, and then this is base coat color. So I'm going to go in now, and I'm loading it the same way I've been loading it. And we're going to just soften it. I'm going to try to go in between some of the colors. Well, I think I need to go into a different brush because by combining the green and that blue, we have a little bit of a teal. And that's not what I wanted, even though that's very pretty. And you can go back and forth like this and keep adding to it and trying to create a nice soft effect. But right now, I think it's fairly balanced. So we're going to move on to the fun things, which are the petals. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm hoping that as I turn this and move it around, I won't go off screen. And again, I'm going to be using a smaller. I'm using the domed round brush. And I have a variety of sizes. So if you see one's more of a purple or navy blue, as opposed to the brown, just know I sometimes I switch back and forth between my brushes and the Gisoni brushes. Okay, so we're going to go in and we're going to work on the dark ones and the dark petals. And what I'm going to do is the color actually that I'm using was the color I based here. I'm going to just start putting in the highlights. Now what's nice is I don't have to worry about bringing it on top because they are the same color. But what I want to do is start forming the folds or the ripples that are in each petal. So I take it one petal at a time, and that's why I only have these petals to work on. But by doing these, you will see how I've done all of them. Now this petal was really interesting. I put a little dot here. It kind of is going this way. So I'm going to just give it a hint of some highlight and leave it alone. And yes, I did have to actually take a picture of a daisy, and I use that for my reference. You can paint beautiful flowers without looking at reference, but I find by looking at reference photos, I get little things that surprise me, like this little flower petal that's hidden back here. Now I've noticed that this is needing to be built up a little bit more, so I'm just in the same color now. Now you might be saying, well, Debbie, why aren't you just working more in gray tones? Why are these more blue tones? With this rich blue background, I have to say that if we were to come in with gray, especially some of the pre-mixed grays, they might look a little bit orange, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you. I have a fairly neutral color of gray here, and hoping that this is dry. But I want to show you what happens when you come in with gray. And you see how muddy it looks and how it almost looks orange or like a raw sienna. Now, there might be times to use that, but that would not look like a shadow on a daisy. You could use that in the center, but it's just very muddy looking and orangey. Would almost look like an animal went to the bathroom on your daisy instead of looking like a daisy. So the whole point is what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a variety of gray blues. And mainly it's because of this beautiful color that I've put on the background. So now I'm going to go into my highlight for the top petals. And what you'll find is we're always going to be one value different than the background. And remember, a value is how light or dark a color is. Intensity, how vivid it is. A pure pigment would be extremely intense because it has just pure pigments in it. So as we use this, if I refer to how intense something is, I'm talking about how bright it is, how vivid the color is, how pure it is. If I'm talking about the value, I'm talking about how light or dark it is. So I do know that this is going to be the lightest area of the flower. So I'm taking each petal by itself, but I always keep in mind that when I'm painting a flower, that basically while we're doing each petal, the flower overall has value and form also. And so I have to keep in mind that as I'm placing my values in, and it's not too difficult now, but as you've been painting a while and you could flip your board over, sometimes you get confused as to what goes where. So what I'm trying to do is just create an overall form. I do not have any water in this brush. And I think for those of you who are newer painters, you will like these brushes and this technique because it's almost like using color pencil with paint. All I'm pretty much doing is pulling the paint, just as if it was a pencil. And this works really well because of the nature of the daisies. The daisies tend to have a little bit of a striatedness to them, where we have these lights and darks going on. They're kind of like ripples within the petal themselves. I am going to try to lift this up. So what happens is I do look at my photo from periodically, but I then go with how I base coated the petals and what's happening in each individual petal. Like I know this needs to be dark here, so I'm going to leave that dark because it's tucked under. And I'll continue doing these 4 top petals. Now I'm liking this area right here. Oops, that went out a little bit. I'm going to bring the light over. And then I have to decide what's going to be up and what's going to be under. And why don't we have a fold here. Why don't we put a fold over here? And then we'll bring this side up and over. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm loading my brush and just tapping it on the paper towel. So it is got full strength paint in it, but not so much that I'm going to have blobs of paint. Because I'm working on such a large painting, it's easy to load my brush like this and then just keep working it so I can blend it away. This up and over. Okay, so now this one's all underneath. And I'm allowing some of this original background color to show through, especially in areas that will be dark. I'm gonna probably come over here and do some shading later on. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and I've got the same brush in my hand. I'm going to use the same color that we just put on here. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to put it back over here. I'm going to start covering smaller areas. Now look how much brighter that looks there than here. It's because of the original color underneath that. And just do the outside edge. I came in a little too heavy, so I'm using my finger to blot it. And then I'll blend it just a little. Okay. Now, since I went up in value there, I need to come up in value here. So I'm going to move into my new color, but I'm going to go into a little bit of a smaller brush. That was a 4. Now I'm going to go into a 2. And I'm moving up in value, which means we're going to get a little bit lighter. I load my brush, and then I take off just a little bit on my palette, or excuse me, on my paper towel. And a lot of people say, well, I mean, I noticed that you really take your time with your values, that you don't have a lot of extreme lights and darks, or other teachers have had that. And my answer is that's because I'm working on flowers. I see a lot of people painting really nice flowers, but they don't look realistic because they're coming up with their values too quickly. And that's mainly so that they can get it done quicker. Because somewhere along the line, people decided quick and easy was the best way. I think when you're wanting to paint, sometimes it pays off taking your time. And so in here, this is an area that's going to be nice and bright. I need to bring that down. And so what I'm going to do is just make sure I fill in really nice there. So you can see how the petal will continue to take shape. I leave a lot of this bluish color in the background as we head towards the bottom, because the petals do fold just a little bit going down into the center. So did you notice where I put my brush where the brightest and lightest is when I first start? And then I'm pretty much just dragging that across, and then I'll go back and I'll do a little dry brushing technique where you're going back and forth and circular motions if we need a little bit more solid coverage. So you can see how these are already looking so much better than these, just with the one value difference. So now we have this rolled petal. And I almost put my brush down with solid paint on it. So I'm going to go along this outside edge and bring it down. And I'm going to just softly blend it. I have a little bit of paint in my brush, which is making it hard to blend out. So I'm going to do a little bit more painting up here. And then once the paint diminishes, I'm going to go back over here and soften this just a little bit. I want this to roll back, so I want this area back here to be darker. Now, don't be afraid to pull these lines straight down. You may run into your fold, but we still have more values to play with. As a decorative painter, I paint on wood a lot, and I know I've been painting on a lot of canvases, but I must say I really enjoy the way the paints perform on a canvas as opposed to wood. They blend easier, they seem creamier. So you see how I just brighten that up by putting another coat right there. Isn't that fun? Okay, so this one's underneath. So we're gonna just bring some more lines. We're gonna say that tip is gonna be nice and bright. And it's okay if you pull a little bit down onto the center. Actually, that's a good thing. Now I can still see I have a little bit of a gap there. So I'm going to go back into my first highlight color and just come along here. I'll eventually shade that a little bit darker, but I really don't, at this point, I don't want a lot of that showing through. So you can see that we still have a long way to go here as opposed to over here, but we have a lot more steps too. So I'm going to go now into the same color that I was using here. And we're going to just, if you notice that I'm adding a lot of lights, well, when I base coated basically with our shade color, the darkest color, because it's a lot easier to go in and just add more lights with this technique than adding shades. I might paint this smaller and approach it completely differently. So I just put in our highlights right here. You see how there's some darkness there and the original color is kind of showing through there. So that's why I'm saying the original color was the shade color. Put a little lightness along that edge there. And then I'm just blending it. Not a lot to do with these petals that are behind. And that's good because we want them to be in the background. I'm just blending this out a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go into a smaller brush. And the reason I keep going into smaller brushes is because then I can cover a smaller area with each value I go up. Now I've already used all these colors over here on the other side that I had finished before we started. If you take each petal by itself, you'll get this done in no time. Do not be in a hurry. Enjoy the process. Watch the video once or twice before you get started. This is my lightest and brightest so far. I know I will only have one more light color after this. We'll add some darkness. So you can see I just went over this petal, even though I considered that done before. But every now and then, you just say, oh, hey, I want to do a little something else over here. And then that's going to dry and settle down. Remember where our lightest and brightest area was on this. I'm going to come right back there right away and really brighten this up. Now I'm going to do a dry brushing technique to really soften this because I want this to look like it's bending down. For those of you who have never dry brushed before, I have a video. I have multiple videos, basic techniques, but I have one specifically about dry brushing. Now I want to build up some more of the, I just got something on I got a dark color on my brush and I'm like, why is this getting dark all of a sudden? But it's okay, it will give me a chance to just bring out some more streaking. But I accidentally put my brush into some wet paint on my paper towel. And that's where I picked up the dark color. You see how that's folding? With each layer I put on, it's looking more and more realistic. Now, if you like more whimsy realism and you don't want to go through all these steps, that's fine. There's a lot of artists out there who enjoy painting like that. But I want to try to show you how to make a real flower. And perhaps you'll learn a few things along the way. I'm just softening this, making it look a little bit more like the whole thing is a light color. Now what I'm going to do is I want to add some more streaking, but I'm going to go down into the value that was right underneath that. Okay, we're over here on this. And we're going to go into that same color that I was using for the highlights. As I'm going away, I'm softening it. Got just a little hole right there, so I'm going to just tap it in. You have to watch that you don't pick up any water if there's water on your paper towel. You see how there's that edge there? And it's the original base coat color. I really don't want that there. We want that to raise up a little bit more. So I'll go into some darker colors. I went back into our first highlight. There, now I can see the edge of that petal a little better. Okay. Stick around now, it's starting to look a little bit more like these here. I do want to do a little bit of shading. So I'm going to rinse out this brush. And I want to add some shading around here. And the first thing I want to do I need to clean my brush out, and we're going to put in a little bit of dark color. I am mixing some of my colors up. Okay. What I want to do is before I shade here, show you, I have a picture on my phone of my reference. So I want to show you, this is what we're going to create. Now, is there some form here? And actually the lightest area is right here on the center. And then it goes down into this area. That's just a little bit concave. Now, we could make it where it's all these areas that are like little pentagons. They're like, have 5 sides to them. But this particular center has already opened. Most of these have opened up and they've released the pollen. Yes, that's what makes us sneeze. And so this is what we're going to create now, because that's my reference photo. So I'll set that to the side. So I'm putting in some of the underneath tones. The first thing I want to do is come in, and I'm hoping that this color is going to be okay. And I want to put in some of those light areas. And I'm dry brushing it. This is almost a donut shape. In fine art, some people consider this a fifth form called a torus. I learned that many, many, many years ago before my kids were born, when I was in college. But I must say, I like all the videos that you can find here on YouTube or classes, because when I was in college, no one showed us how to load a brush, how to hold a brush, what colors to use. They pretty much just taught concepts. While it was fun creating things, I really wanted to know which end of the brush to hold. Because I knew how to draw, but I had no idea how to paint. And I had to teach myself that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along the outside here, and I'm doing it back to back side load or back to back float. I put in the paint, then I flip my brush over. It's also called a flip float. I'm also, with my dirty brush, I'm going to load just a corner of it into the green color. So I have a greenish brush, and I'm good. Just a little bit of green brown in here. Let's see, that's not showing up. I want to glaze it, but I want it to show up too. So when I glaze, I don't use a medium. I just really work the paint into my brush. Most of the time, water is my medium. So you can see how pretty that is. It's a little bit of our color of our stem here. We're keeping that right close to the center. We're not letting that spread out. We're keeping it very soft. There's no opaqueness to this. Now I just created a hard line right here. Can you see that? I'm going to soften it with my clean side of my brush. Plus I just rinsed out my brush really quick. Okay, I think that's looking pretty nice. Now let's set that set up and I'll show you the next steps for the petals over here. Now what I want to do is I want to come in and do a little bit of glazing. So we're going to finally have a dark color. Again, and this is like a gray blue color. Because if you were to, I already showed you what would happen if we were to go in with a gray. And the reason I'm pointing that out too is because I know a lot of you like to do your own thing with colors. But I work very hard putting my colors together, making sure everything lays down well. Okay, so now let's look and see, really look at this and see where do we need some separation? Well, obviously I want to add some shading to these back petals here. And then I'm going to just come down and separate these two. And I side loaded my brush. And again, I do have videos on how to float and or side load. It's the same thing. I want to make sure that I come into these areas down here and pull some nice darkness in. And then wherever areas overlap is a nice place. Did you just see what I did? I zigzag. Sometimes I have to catch myself because I do things so automatically. I forget to explain what I'm doing. I had almost no paint in my brush. Now that looks so gray, but it is such a blue gray. Such a pretty color. Okay, and we're going to go behind this fold here. And wow, if that isn't going to lift it up, I don't know what is. Now, I don't want to get too dark here. So if it starts getting super dark, I go in with the clean side of my brush and clean it up. Okay, so let's separate this background a little bit more here. So now, as you look around, all the petals are pretty much looking the same. Now I see this right here and I'm not liking that. So I'm going to go into my first highlight color. And why would I go into my first highlight color? Well, because I just want to make it just a little bit lighter than what it is. I still want it to look like it's kind of concave there, but not like there's a dent out in the petal, and that's much softer. And as I came in and I shaded, I get rid of my ripples a little bit, so maybe I want to bring some of them back. But what I don't like about what's going on right now is all of the petals pretty much look the same. So we're going to put out one more light color. And I want to use it in the upper right-hand corner of the flower. Why? Because there's an upper right-hand light source, and that is getting more light. So I'm going to just keep my brush as if to side load, and I'm going to side load it. But if you want to drag, pull it, and just go into like a little number 0, you can do that. But what I want to do is I want to show you how nice you can clean up edges with this brush. And this is going to be so nice and bright now. And I'll only do it on this one, and then I'll go into the other one. Oh, I'm sorry. You have to remember not to go off camera. So that's just looking so nice and soft and a little bit brighter. Now I'll go into my smaller little number 0 with this cool white color. And let's add a little bit more lightness over here. I have a lot of paint in my brush, and I'd like to blend it away. So I'm going to wait until it gets a little bit more used up, and then I can blend it away. So now if this is looking a little bit dark, I'm going to go back into my original highlight color and pull a little bit more lightness in there. And I'll just blend this away. This is my lightest light color again. So notice how I'm covering a smaller area, and I'm being very particular as to where I'm putting this. With every value we put on, we cover a smaller area. Now the cool white that I have here, and that is the name of this color of the paint, that's only going to be on this side. I won't bring it back over here. If you need more highlights on this side, you would go into the value underneath it. So I want to add a little bit more brightness over here. So what you can see is as you start adding this particular color, the other highlights that you had that looked beautiful and was nice and bright, all of a sudden start looking a little bit dull. And so that's when you know you've got to go in and add just a little bit more. I had hardly any paint on my brush. I'm just blending it away, brightening these petals. I can blend this away. Okay. I think that's looking good. Now let's finish up the center. I want to use a brush that's old and opens up so I can stipple all these colors in. So I've got this really big brush and I'm really pulling on it to open up. Now I'm going to put a variety of colors in. I didn't put these out ahead of time because I didn't want them to dry. Yes. Okay, so I am going to be looking at my reference photo again, which is right here. And I'm going to take in, and I'm only loading half the brush. So it's a really big brush. I only got half of it loaded, and I'm going to stipple here. Now I could have taken my liner brush and tried to make this super realistic, all these little teeny lines and things like that. But in the scope of what's important, this is going to look like a real center. Only it's going to go a lot quicker. And again, I just have my first value in my brush. Now I will lay this darker color in here because this is going to be a little concave. But right in this area here, and it is on line drawing. I'm not going to bother transferring it on. For those who don't know how to transfer line drawing, please reference some of my other photos or my other videos, excuse me. Okay, so now I'm going to go up in value. And it's really important that we're allowing these colors underneath to kind of blow through. You don't want to come in too thick. Now, I just pulled my brush because I was looking elsewhere, but I think we're going to be okay with that. You can see it got globby right there. We'll come back in with a little bit lighter color to try to break it up. I'm going to try using the clean side of my brush to just soften it a little bit. Okay. Now, while that's settling up, I'm going to actually use my little number 0, and I'm taking this and I'm going to put some little dots in here. We'll have a little bit of a space in between them. I'm not going to worry about whether or not they're pentagons. I'm just kind of indicating that they're not a complete circle. Sometimes they might overlap. And there's just a few heading off. And again, like I said, this is because it had not completely opened. This area is over here has opened, and I'm going to just come in and punch down a little bit more. There you go. So while I've got this in this color in my brush, I'm going to load it and just brush mix a highlight for the stem. And we're going to just stroke this on. And I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow now. I never do much to my stems. I want them to be in the background. But I'm going to take a little bit more yellow. So I'm trying to cover a smaller area. Now I need to stop because I can see I'm almost getting a little circle or a little hole in there. So you need to know when to stop. Okay, so let's go back into our stippling brush. And it's going to take a while for this to settle down and dry. So I'm hoping I'm going to be able to show you everything. I'm going to come in and just add a little bit more lights in here. And where's our light source? It's in the upper right-hand lights. So I'm going to have this area right here be a little bit lighter. I think it's looking really good. Now I'm going to come in with a small round brush. And I'm going to try to lay in my highlights because these are still wet. These little dots take a long, and I want to try to highlight them. I think that's looking really nice. And let me look at my reference photo anymore. I am thinking that we need a little bit more lightness around here. So let me go in my brush. I'm going to go into the first gold color. And I'm going to just pull just a few out here because this brown area looks a little bit too harsh. And to go back in with my stippling brush would be too hard to control. And so I'm going to actually bring some of the pollen out onto the flower. And I think that's going to soften it a lot. Yeah, it is. So otherwise that dark was just a little bit too harsh for me. Don't press too hard. You press really hard, you can make a big dot like that. So you want to press really light. Just keeping this nice and light, nice and airy. But essentially the brown should be underneath, and the only area that doesn't have a lot of the golden color on it would be that green area that be glazed in. Oh, that's so pretty. Now, what I like to do is I like to make sure that my flowers have been kissed by the sun. So I'm going to go into our lightest yellow. I'm going to really work at my brush and glaze. And I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow here and there, just to say it's been kissed by the sun. I don't want too much because I don't want it to look like a sunflower. Please notice that I'm putting it mostly in the lightest areas. But I will bring just a little bit over here as we come back. That's pretty. And then I just want to add a little bit of darkness, and I'm mixing that brown and green together. And we're going to come in and shade. Just shading the stem. All right. Well, that's it. I hope you really enjoyed another large flower painting. I am enjoying painting them. I'm hoping to do one by George O'Keeffe. When I was in college, I did some paintings by her, and I just absolutely love her. I love painting with large flowers. And so always remember when you're painting, even if you're a beginner, it needs to bring you joy. And I hope that that's what this lesson has brought to you. Please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And also, don't forget to click on the bell so that you will be notified the next time I create a video. Until then, we'll see you. Bye-bye.